everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Demystifying Post-Production Motion Monday. Happy Halloween! My name's Ellie and I'm joined for the last time by Ian and Dustin. How are we going, guys?
Hey everyone.
The last time? This is it?
Happy Monday.
Last time this
Happy
month.
Halloween.
The last time
Okay.
this month.
Oh, okay. Last time. Hi, everybody.
Don't worry, not the
Let's
last time forever. And hey to everyone who's here in the chat already. So morning to Charles and hey to Drake. And yes, Ian is bringing the Halloween spirit. Dustin's got his spooky lights going on and his skull. And as you can see, I've made no effort at all. So I'm really sorry about that. But hopefully, you know, I can make it up to you all in this session. So before we get into what we're going to be doing in this final week of this series, let's have a little look at the Maxon.net events page, which is where you can see all the great live events and webinars and sessions that we have going on as a Maxon team. So as we can see today, we have the final part of our Demystifying Post-Production, and then on Thursday, Max has his Maxon Color Show, and on Friday we have Stefan Hashi's weekly talk show based on VFX. And then a little teaser for what's happening in next month's Demystifying series is we've got MoGraph Mondays coming back. So me, Lionel and Chad are going to be running through a whole bunch of cool MoGraph stuff inside of C4D and After Effects and Red Giant as well. And yeah, so feel free to check out this page here on the Maxon.net website and you can see all the great stuff and register for those events that are upcoming. If you ever miss a session or you want to see what live events we have, for example, Maxon Color or Ask the Trainer, those are hosted on the Maxon Train Team YouTube channel, and as are all of the recordings. So yeah, don't worry if we ever go too fast in a session or you want to learn something new, then definitely head over to that YouTube channel. And finally, we like to say thank you for you guys being part of our live sessions by giving away free t-shirts. So all you have to do, go to the handout section inside of GoToWebinar, and you can find, hopefully you can find this page here, which has a super secret merch link. All you have to do, enter the password Spooky Sculpts, and it's good for one shirt. All you have to do is pay for shipping, which varies depending on where you're from. So guys, over the last 4 weeks, so I've not been part of the last two, but I know we've been diving into learning ZBrush. Ian's been basically teaching us from scratch how to get started and how to build some of our own assets, ready to perhaps bring into Cinema 4D, for example, which is kind of the idea behind today's session for me and Dustin. Isn't that right, Dustin?
That is correct. It's happening.
It does look like we got a question though that is more of like clarification. So I kind of want to answer that first before you guys get started, because you're going to show all the magic, which is cool.
Absolutely.
They're saying sorry for the question, but what's the difference, aka when would you use between traditional subdivision and DynaMesh? You're asking because I accidentally ended up with the model having 63 million polys, which is quite a lot, to be honest. So to just kind of quickly reiterate, DynaMesh is more for like sketching. So anytime you're modeling something in ZBrush, DynaMesh is perfect for sketching. So I would use DynaMesh when you're trying to just get an idea on the table. You would then move to subdivisions or ZBrush when you're ready to refine your model. So 63 million, while that is quite a lot. A lot of models, I would say your range could be anywhere between 5 to 10 million would be a really good kind of cap in the beginning of when you're kind of just sculpting and playing around. But definitely DynaMesh, think of it more as a sketching tool. You're just getting an idea out. Then ZRemesher is for when you're trying to bring the topology down to subdivisions and then refine. So hopefully that answers that question.
Cool. And yeah, Charles was saying with 10 million polys, how would C4D react to that? Dustin, have you got much experience with
That's pretty much how it happens, unless you're able to work with proxies, sprites, instances, whatever. Yeah, it's actually not so bad. It really depends. I mean, like what your VRAM and the power of your machine looks like, but as a general rule of thumb, I I run away from anything that's close to 10 million polys as fast as I can. Not very fast, as fast as I can.
No, yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be the, I mean, that workflow kind of already exists with other programs too, ZBrush to other set programs, where you're always going to want to try to bring it down and use subdivisions when moving it to another program, just because ZBrush is so unique with the ability to handle high polys. You want to be able to kind of move that over safely. So it is recommended to just kind of get subdivisions in there and something that's enough to sustain the look and feel of the model, but not capture detail as your lowest. So I always fall on the rule of thumbs of like 10 to 20% is like kind of where I start when I ZBrush. So let's say I have like, you know, just 100,000 polys for my model. I usually will take it down to about, you know, 20,000 polys as like a starting spot. As long as the low ZBrush kind of holds the shape and looks like the thing, then you can step up from there, project details or just sculpture details.
Cool. Yeah, and Charles, yeah, don't apologize for the questions. We love them. That's what that questions area is here for. So when me and Dustin get into the stuff we're going to be creating today, Ian's going to be there to facilitate all your questions.
Yeah.
So I guess we can kind of like dive in. I believe the purpose of this final week is pretty much for me and Dustin to take these assets, these amazing assets that Ian's created, bring them into Cinema 4D, which is kind of our DCC of choice, and then look at creating some materials and rendering them inside of Redshift. The idea is, so feel free to throw in any of your ideas, any of your thoughts. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Me and Dustin are gonna like simultaneously work inside of C4D and Redshift, and we're going to just sort of screen share back and forth between the two of us. It's not a competition because Dustin would win, and so it's just going to be a nice friendly session today, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Cool. Okay, so I guess I'll kick this off, and then yeah, at any point I can hand this back over to Dustin. So are we doing webcams on or off, guys? What are we thinking?
I'm thinking off. I'm thinking off so that we can do full screen. So do you want to talk about I'm sorry, I'm reading the comments. Do you want to talk about your idea of what you're thinking to do?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we sort of had a little chat before, and the idea was, are we going to take the assets and recreate something, or are we going to take this final sort of piece that Ian's put together? And we thought, let's take the final piece and see where our different directions go. And I'm going to try and do something a little bit different and try and create something a little bit cute and cartoony, which isn't, you know, traditionally what Redshift is known for, but I thought it could be quite fun, interesting, and there's some little material tricks that I haven't really talked about before on a live session. So that's what I'm kind of going to go with. Dustin, what were your thoughts?
I just wanted you to explain yours while I'm getting a head start on my scene. So
wow,
that's pretty much.
I get the pressure by starting first, right? I bet we'll go to you and you'll have something beautiful.
No, I'm thinking about actually going a bit more grayscale. It's something I don't do very often. So I'm thinking about going a bit more grayscale and maybe playing with like the color in Subsurface and seeing where that works. Ooh. But yeah, so we'll see how that's about to turn out.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Do something different from the norm.
Yes, I like that. Take advantage of this session by, you know, potentially embarrassing ourselves, doing something new.
That's what I do every day, and people seem to like that.
That's the sweet spot. Okay, cool. Let me switch off my webcam and actually get some stuff going.
Okay, camera's off.
Cool. So I presume everyone can see my screen and can see C4D.
Yep, you're good.
Yep.
Good stuff. Cool. Right. So yeah, this is very similar to the one Ian put together. It's pretty much identical. I pulled it in from ZBrush. If I just open this up, I've got this little ZBrush over here. Yeah, and I basically Z'd this into C4D. And the important thing here, don't do what I do. Don't just Z and hit all, which will just bring all of the subtools over. Ian taught me, you know, about 15 minutes ago that the best thing to do is press visible, and then it will bring across just those visible subtools. Isn't that right, Ian?
That is correct. Yeah, you want to make sure that you hit visible, so have everything that is visible that you want to send over, and everything else you can hide. This will prevent from random stuff popping over.
Cool. Yeah. So
or you can live on the edge like we did.
You could.
Yeah, or you can give yourselves more work to do.
You could also too, I've done this before, depending on how organized people want to be. You could create a new ZTL and throw away all the stuff that you don't need and call that your render ZTL. And that way you always know when you open it back up what's supposed to be rendered. Just a thought.
Cool. Yeah, and so this comes in with like the polypaint setup, and in Subdivision Surface generators automatically. As you can see, I deleted all of the the polypaint, all the tags that came in, because I don't need them for the kind of work that I'm going to be doing now inside of here. And then I've just disabled this Subdivision Surface just so we can work nice and quick on the live stream. Cool, so the first thing I've done, change my render to Redshift, because that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to create Redshift materials and some Redshift lights, and I'm just going to throw in a camera. This is sort of like this is like the first thing that I would do, and I'm going to find a nice little angle that I think that's cool, but we can change this later on. So these are like the first steps that I would do. And the idea, yeah, I was saying, I want to try and create something cartoony and a little bit sketch and toon-esque. Of course, there isn't like a toon shader inside of Redshift, but we can still do some little tricks that can still look quite nice, and I'm gonna try and do those live for everyone now. So first things first, let me just open up my render view. That's how I like to work. So here to go a little preview for you of the kind of thing I'm gonna try and create. And let me just dock this in here, and let's dock that there. Cool. Right, what we got going on? Yeah.
Real quick, not to interrupt, sorry. Could you just show under the extensions how you would install GoZ for anyone who doesn't know? Yes.
So extensions, ZBrush, GoZ install. Also, this is a lovely way of starting my session. Let me just save this and restart C4D. If you use Redshift, I'm sure you've seen this before. So what shall I call this? Week 5 DPP. So I'm just going to have to restart C4D. Soz everybody. I don't know a different way of getting that back. If you know, please let me know. Let that close and fill.
I just felt like saying hello.
Hey, that's why I have it there, just in case I ever need to close C4D or in case it crashes. It still says hello to everyone, so you're all still part of the session. Okay, right. Round 2, render view.
Yep.
Okay, let's kick this off again. First things first, let me just throw in some simple lighting ready for when I create some materials. So go to dome light, that's how I like to work. And then I'm going to throw in just like a simple HDR. You could use asset browser ones, or I've got a couple that I can use on my second screen. So I'm just going to drag and drop this into here. Okay, cool. Cool, so we've got some sort of base lighting, and let me just move my little axis gizmo here into view so I can start to adjust some of this lighting. And let's see, let's get our lighting maybe coming in from the right-hand side. Cool. Just simple stuff for now, just nice and simple. So let's create a toon-like material. So I'm going to create a Redshift material. I'm going to create a standard material, and let's do like the pumpkins first. So I did actually create these pumpkins myself in ZBrush after Ian's first week. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit proud of myself because I, like many of you, have very limited knowledge of ZBrush, but thanks to you, Ian, I can now create a few things, but I didn't have the time to create everything else, so I've stolen Ian's stuff.
That's perfect.
That,
take it. Yeah. Sharing is caring. That's how I roll.
Sharing is caring. Okay, cool. Right. So let's figure out how we're going to create this this material. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch off my reflection weight. So I don't want to have any reflection going on because I want to create a bit of like a flat material. There's a couple of different ways we can do this. I found whether it's a hack or whether it's a technique, I'll let you guys decide that. But what we can do, if we just double click in our node editor, we can search for any nodes that we want to use. And there is actually a node called AO, aka ambient occlusion. So a lot of people know ambient occlusion as like a bit of like a fake sort of GI shadow effect. And what we can do is we can actually set up custom AOV passes and do AO passes. That's all kind of like not really what we're going to focus on. We're just going to focus on using this AO to then create kind of like a sketch and toon-y effect. So if I just solo my AO, we can see that we're getting that sort of result. So we're getting, and in like the creases or the areas that would have shadow, we can see that we're getting a little bit of shadow. That's sort of what that's pretty much what it's doing. Let me pull this over so we can see some of our settings a bit more, and maybe, yeah, that's fine. Cool, so these are the settings of our ambient occlusion. We have samples, we have bright and dark, which is effectively the colors of the AO. So the bright areas are white and the dark areas are this black. Not too fussed about those because I'm actually going to colorize those a little bit later on. We can then see we have a spread, and this is the spread of our AO. So if I sort of pull this down, we can see we're now starting to get some slightly harsher shadows, which is slightly closer to the effect that we perhaps want. We then have a fall off, which is the kind of the fall off of our AO. So we can sort of we can tweak this, and you can see we get some of those gray areas versus some of those fully black areas. I'm actually going to leave this on 1 because I think that worked fine. And AO by default is seen as a diffuse, but what we can do is if we select reflective, it gets seen as a bit more like a glossy type of material. And really the whole purpose of that is it actually really exaggerates those like shadow areas. And so I'm not really worried about using this AO in its traditional way. I'm not creating a glossy material, but I like the fact that enabling the reflective gives me that harsher shadow, which when it comes to creating a cartoony kind of material, this is going to help me out. We then have different output modes. So by default, we have occlusion. And then what we can do, we can actually change it to return bent normals. And so what this is going to do, this is going to give us the sort of the occlusion is now happening in the inverse based on the normals. And the reason we want to do this is we can then colorize this and create that. I'm going to call it the sketch and toon effect. It's not going to be as good, but it's still going to look pretty cool, and it's going to be in Redshift. So this is sort of our setup for our ambient occlusion. At the moment, I agree, it's probably not looking like much, but if we now colorize this, we can start to define the shadows, the kind of like the mid, and then the light areas, thanks to this ambient occlusion. So how are we going to colorize this? Well, our trusty ramp node can be used to colorize a whole range of things inside of Redshift. So if I get my ramp node, and if I just connect these things together, and I want this to be controlling my base color. Cool, right, so now the way we want to colorize this, so we can see it's actually already doing something. We already have our grayscale gradient based on this ramp here. But how do we make it look a little bit more cartoony? Well, we can define those 3 different colors or 2 different colors or 4, depending on how detailed you want the shadow and the light to be. So let's create a 3rd knot or handle. And I'm going to highlight them both. And I'm going to change my interpolation to step. This is going to give me that really sort of block color. We can see on here, we're starting to get that effect that we're hoping for. So now let's pull these over. And so hopefully we can see that we're starting to get that cartoon feel. And now it's just a case of defining the colors that we want. So I've already got like a orange color that I quite like. So let me drop this down and let's do my hex code. That's definitely not orange. Let's try take 2. There we go, that's looking a bit better. Cool, so that's my orange color. And then, so that's my middle color. And then we can choose our lighter color and our darker color. So if I just paste in the same color, this is my little trick, and then just choose a lighter version, maybe want it to be quite exaggerated to really see the difference between them. Yeah, let's go for something like that. And then the opposite is going to be just a darker version. And again, we're going to exaggerate it. Cool. So this is how I'd create a fake sketch and toon effect. And the final thing we can do is we can actually get some black outlines by using, there's 2 different ways of doing this actually. We could use a Fresnel node or we can use a curvature node. So feel free to have a look at both and decide what works for you and your geometry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a Fresnel node. And if I just solo this, we can see that we're getting these outer edges and these dark areas in here. And again, we can colorize this to make it look like we're doing like a black outline on our geometry. So again, let's just unsolo that. And let's grab another ramp node. And let's plug this into our alt input. Cool, so we're getting a little bit closer. Again, let's highlight both of our knots. So for everyone's kind of, if everyone's wondering why I'm randomly clicking, I'm getting used to using a tablet. As you can see, it's there we go. It's going really well. Yes.
What tablet
so
are you
yeah,
using?
I am using a Sense Labs tablet, and I love it very much. But yeah, getting used to that after being on a mouse for a very, very long time is taking some getting used to. But I definitely will not be going back. That's
Nice.
for sure.
Nice. So we have a couple people asking about maps from ZBrush on over into Cinema 4D through GoZ. I just wanted to clarify, I didn't purposely put maps in this project just because, for 2 reasons. One, I didn't want to throw too much information out too quickly. And we wanted to really just showcase that you can sculpt something in ZBrush with a very limited or simplistic workflow and then throw it into Cinema 4D and get some rendering done. So maps weren't generated, but also too, generating maps in ZBrush is a bit of a process, and I could probably take up the whole hour just showcasing the proper way to set all that up. So we do have future stuff going on in the, for a more advanced ZBrush. But for those who are wondering about how you can generate your maps, if your subtools does have UVs on them or you'd like to export out a normal map, you could very easily in ZBrush go up to Z plugin, and there's this thing called multi-map exporter, and then you can export your maps out from there. We'll go over that in a future Demystify, but just wanted to clarify because we got a few questions about that.
Thanks, Ian.
Sweet. I've been sitting over here on mute, not realizing I was muted. Hi, everyone.
At least your
Dustin.
camera wasn't on, because then no one knows.
I mean, yeah.
I just thought Ellie was taking the whole show. I was like, go, Ellie, go, go, go.
Oh no, I can hand over. I was just going to do the final little bit, which is just these black outlines, and then I could throw it over to you, Dustin.
Yeah, I'm trying to actually optimize Redshift at the moment. I'm like super slow updates actually. It's interesting.
Oh, that's not good.
Personal problem.
Okay, cool. Right, let me just finish this bit off because literally one more node and then good to go. So yeah, so what we've done is we've grabbed our Fresnel and we've just colorized it again with this ramp, and I've just inverted my black and white knots here, and now we're creating this black outline. But we're now losing the color. So how do we connect these things together to get the sort of like sketch and toon effect and our black outlines? Well, we need a color composite. And if I just throw that over, oh, good accuracy, Ellie. Normally, if you throw it over a branch, it will connect. Cool, so ramp, AO ramp into our base color of our color composite, and then our output color of our Fresnel and ramp can go to our blend color. And then if we just change our composite mode, which is like our blending mode inside of Photoshop, to multiply, we now have our cartoony material based on our 3 colors here. And as I said, you know, you can change this. You could have 2 colors, you could have 4 colors, whatever you fancy. And then we have our little black outline here to create some little cartoony style materials. Yeah, and then all I'm going to do when Dustin takes over is copy and paste this material, change my colors and throw it on here, and then just tweak these and these. So let's say we wanted to have more of a black outline, we can just pull this up. If we want to have less of a black outline, we can pull it down. And if we want to have more dark areas on our model, we can increase this. If we want to have more light areas, we can increase this. So at the moment, it doesn't interact to light. There is a way of doing it with Espresso, but you know, that's maybe something for a whole other session. But at least it's a nice way of creating some cartoony effects inside of Redshift. So Dustin, do you want to?
Real quick question for you, Ellie.
Oh, yes.
Which version of SenseLab tablet are you using?
Oh.
Do you have the 3-button?
So yeah, the medium bundle, and then I use the 3-button pen, and I have the quick keys as well.
Nice.
Yeah. I could always.
Sweet.
And then question for Dustin. Are you using GPU or CPU with Redshift?
I'm using GPU. I think I have to restart. So give me a minute here. Yeah, I'm using GPU.
Nice.
But I do find that there are times where when I'm in, say, like Zoom, sometimes even in Discord, it gets weird. And so it's more I think just the priorities that I have set up or lack thereof.
Okay, do you want me to carry on?
Yeah, go ahead and carry on for a moment. I'm going to close off and then restart Cinema here a second.
That is cool. I can do that. Cool, yeah. So I'm just basically going to change just a few of these colors. I'm not going to do them all. I'm just going to do this one, and then I'm actually going to create some cartoon smoke. So do like a little smoky effect whilst Dustin restarts. Right, let's make this a little bit darker. Cool, so we have the stem now. We've pretty much just done the pumpkin and the stem. Right, okay. What do I want to do now? So let's give ourselves a bit of a, so where's my light coming from? So my light's coming from the right hand side. So a little go-to trick sometimes is if you've got like a dome light with your light coming in a certain direction, to light it up these sort of like the opposite sides of your objects, if you don't necessarily want to use a light, you could actually use what you would call like a bit of like a light bounce, which is pretty much just going to be a plane. And we can sort of scale this up. And if we sort of pull this here, hopefully if I switch that off and on, you can see that without even having to use another light, we've lightened up now the left hand side of my objects. So that's a nice little trick I like to do quite often. And let's grab a final plane, and I'm just going to, this is going to be my little background. I'm going to zero that out. Actually, let's set that to 90. And let's pull this back. So this is going to be our background now. Cool. So let me just save this. Let's create some smoke along the bottom of here, sort of some slightly cartoony looking eerie smoke, instead of just sort of repeating this material thing. So how would I do this? Well, a lot of people who use Redshift probably know about volumetric lighting, which effectively is a bit like fog in your scene. But another way of doing this is we can actually use the volume builder in fog mode and start to create some interesting smoke or foggy elements that we have a little bit more control of when it comes to sort of size and location. So if I just grab a cube, this is going to be sort of like my fog or smoke shape. And let's just squidge this down and maybe pull this up. This will all make sense, I assure you, very soon. So here we go, right. So we have our cube. So what we can do, if we grab a volume builder, we can put our cube inside of our volume builder, and inside of our object volume type, if we change this to fog, we now get all these tiny little dots. We can see these dots here. And if we want a more dense looking fog, we can decrease the voxel size to make it smaller. Okay, so at the moment, we're not seeing anything in our render view, and that's because we need to set up a few different things to enable us to render this, what we'd call fog volume. So what we want to do is we want to go to create Redshift materials. At the very bottom, we have something called a volume. Throw that onto your volume builder, and still, we don't see anything. If you open up your Redshift volume, and all we have to do is inside of our Redshift volume node, which is automatically set up for us, we have to choose our channel. And so if you're rendering exposure effects for X particles or flume effects or any of that kind of stuff, you can come into here and you can choose the preset or the channel that you have exported from, your thing of choice. What we can do inside of native C4D and Redshift, we can choose the volume builder as our channel, and we can now see something in here. And we can do it for emission as well if we want to, but I'm not too fussed about that for now. So let's just leave that as it is, because we can now see this inside of Redshift. If I could disable that and enable it, we can see this inside of here. Let's make my cube a little bit bigger, so I don't want to be seeing these edges. Yeah, good enough. Okay, so it's not looking like nice wispy fog, is it, guys? So how do we do this? Well, there's a couple of different tricks. The first thing I'm going to do is I don't want it to be completely even or completely flat. So I'm actually going to displace my cube. So if I grab a displacer, I do need to increase the segments on my cube. So, let's go 100 by 100 because it's C4D, it can handle that. And let's go into our displacer shading and grab a noise. And so now this is completely displacing our cube. So if we go into our noise, let's maybe increase our global scale to something like 500. I don't want to spend too much time on here. That's looking fine, that's looking okay. It's giving me a little bit of an uneven surface because remember our fog is being, like the shape of our fog is our cube. So because we've displaced our cube, we've displaced our fog. So from here, we can now start to make it look a little bit more interesting. So excuse these white little lines. It's just a, I've got an AMD Intel iMac, and it just unfortunately does that at the moment. But hey, it's still going. So let's get back into the volume builder. So how do we make this look way more interesting? Well, we can play with our filters. So inside of here, we have a bunch of different filters which do a range of different things. So the first thing we want to do is we want to grab what's called a fog multiply. And then if we multiply our fog volume by 0, it disappears because everything multiplied by 0 is 0. But what we can then do, I just refreshed my render view to see if that helps a little bit. So inside of my fog multiply, inside of my fields option, I can now start to bring some of this smoke or this fog back using a shader field. So if we throw in our shader field, come into our shader, and again, we're going to grab a noise. So similar to how we did for our displacement on our cube. Let's come back into here, and then let's have a look at a different noise type. Let's maybe go for something like gaseous, and let's increase our global scale. Okay, so it's bringing some of those elements back. And then what we can do, let me just move out of the way, we can tweak this noise even more by adjusting our low and high clip. So if I reduce my high clip down, let that kick in. So what's happening now, the areas that are 100% white are effectively being removed from our fog volume. They're being multiplied by 0, so they are, disappearing. So this looks okay, not 35. It looks a little bit better than it did before. So how can we tweak this a little bit more? We can use more of our filters. So we can come in and we can do a fog smooth. So this is similar to like how we smooth our volume builder normally, but we're now basically smoothing that smoke and that fog. Again, looking a little bit better. We're kind of getting closer. So how else can we tweak this? Well, we can always come back into, let's just move that out of the way. We can come back into our Redshift volume and we can control our different channels. So we have scatter, absorption, and emission. So think of scatter as a bit like your diffuse, your absorption is a bit like your transparency, and your emission is your emission, self-illumination, incandescence. So we can increase and decrease the diffuse and the transparency to change the look of our fog. So if I sort of start to increase this, we can see that we're getting a brighter looking fog versus a darker looking fog. We can then tint it if we want to have like a red fog, which looks obviously quite cool for Halloween. And then we can control our absorption, which is, our transparency. So again, a little bit closer. Ooh, that was not good, whatever that just did. Let's move that back up.
I was gonna say that actually looked kind of, that was like randomly cool, but also not what you're going for, but it was neat. I was like, oh, what just happened?
I was like, that looks cool. Then it changed. And I was like, that's not cool. Always wait for your render to refresh before stating anything. Okay, the final thing, if we just God, if you, yeah, so let's see what else can we do. Well, let's throw in one more filter. So if we throw in a range map, basically we can control the voxel range that currently is set to, a min input of 0 and a max input of 1. We can actually change and define this range and use our min and max input settings to basically create a whole new range. And I found, purely just by playing around, that entering a value of 5 now gives us that look of that sort of, that not thick fog, just sort of slightly like wispy fog that's now just taking over some of our different elements. And I really like this. I thought it looked really, really nice. And what's nice is it's completely controllable. So it's our cube that is controlling this, right? So if I wanted to increase, I don't know, let's increase my height maybe, and let's have it covering a little bit more of our model, then we can control the look of our fog and the look of our noise all based on these different settings inside of here, which are our filters, or inside of our Redshift volume. So let's maybe even just tint this a little bit orange, shall we? Let's do a little bit of like, let's do a slight little orange here.
Ellie, quick question. If you said you set that parameter to 5, I think, would setting the max output to 0.2 have the same effect?
That's a good question. 0.2, let's have a look. Yes, it would. So yeah, that's basically the same outcome.
Okay, cool. We had another question, but it's a little off topic, so we can ask it more towards the end.
Yeah. Dustin, are you around? Is he not?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
How?
In non-muted. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I keep going. Happy Monday, everyone.
We're professionals, really,
actually,
I assure you.
Yeah, we do this thing called technology. Let's we can switch over. Let's switch over and do it.
Yeah, cool. Let me throw it over to you. Let me find you. There we go. There we go. Hopefully that goes.
Awesome. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Not at the moment.
No.
Really?
Not yet.
Really.
Let's see here. Hold on.
Well, in the meantime, while you're sorting that out, the question I was going to save towards the very end, but it might be a good one. It's off topic, but this person is Aaron is upgrading to R20 from R26 to 2023 via the Maxon app. They want to know, will it smartly retain custom plugins, extensions, material libraries, etc., or is that something that manually has to happen after the upgrade?
So plugin wise, are we talking like third-party plugins?
They didn't specify. Maybe capsules? Like what about their capsule stuff?
I don't know too much about that side of things. If you do, Dustin.
Yeah, I can't say for sure. Third-party material libraries. So what I do is first back everything up anyway. So before I'm updating anything, I'm usually going through a process of having backups. But what I will say is that what I do like to do is on my NAS or my storage drive, I have a folder called Network Plugins that I use to throw all of my plugins into, both as backup, but also I can simply link my plugins folder from Cinema just to that every time. So I'm not having to manually go in and do a ton of work. It's more just facing that one folder at all times. And then I just update my plugins to that. Say like Grayscale Gorilla, for example. Like if I have to, download any of their stuff, like I'll put it into that folder so that it's automatically updated. So every time I'm doing that, when I get updates, hopefully that makes sense. Does that make sense? So I would say to back up everything just in case and try it out. But usually if you're working from like 26 to 23, it is going to be a new set of folders. So I don't know how that will transfer everything over. So you may have to do that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, they said network plugins, so I could just link to my external drive too, correct? Question mark?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, if we just go to preferences, and we go to plugins, you'll see that I have mine pointing to my drive, software, Maxon, and then network plugins. And that's where it's reading all of my different plugins from.
Very nice.
So yeah, that's how you link it. It's super useful. So I don't know exactly how to answer that question when you're updating, because for me, I've just built that small system in. So it's just every time I have a new version of Cinema, it's just very quick to link it all. So yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so we are sharing my screen, so we can see my screen after the crazy updates. Redshift was super slow for a minute, and I know it's totally my computer. When I'm offline, not in a stream, it goes super quick, and then sometimes it likes to remind me that I'm human. So, yeah. So what I'm doing is creating more of a black and white, kind of a grayscale version of this, and we're going to see what Subsurface looks like. And so when I'm working with Subsurface, there's really no huge rhyme or reason in this particular case, to what I'm doing. It's more just exploration with the settings. As Ellie has stated in many of her training videos on YouTube, like you can get super technical with this and have a lot of fun with it. In my case, I'm just curious to see what this looks like in a bit more of a spooky light. The pun is 100% intended here. And so, yeah, we're just going to experiment with Subsurface kind of on everything. And the lighting is actually fairly simple. So funny part is I think part of the reason why I was dying at first is I was trying to pull in a VDB just for kicks, and then everything just took off on me from there. So when you're working with a bunch of geometry like we have here, really more the resolution of it, VDBs might not always be the best option on stream. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of building just a very simple setup. I have an HDRI that's casting a little bit of ambient light. You can see that in lighting here with our dome light. I can boost this up a little bit actually, because we went super dark with the materials that we have here. And there we go. And I have an area light. And so what I want to do with the area light is actually get a little bit of volumetric lighting. This is more just kind of creative, more of a creative spin on it. And I'm going to actually backlight with a one rim light here. We'll backlight our diorama. And then we can switch over to the other side by just holding down Control and duplicating that light. So now we have one from the other side. So this one on the other side, we're going to dial down the power quite a bit. In fact, we can do that with both of them. And the reason why this is getting so harsh is that I've taken my spread, and we've talked a bit about spread in previous months throughout the Demystifying series. But what spread is doing is it's increasing the directionality of your lights. And so with a spread of 1, this is kind of really just giving you very soft light throughout the surface of the light here. And as we go down to a spread of 0 or much lower, this is just shooting the light straight out, from your light source, very similar to if you had a grid on your light. It's just focusing all of that in one direction. And so the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to add gobos. So we are going to grab a couple gobo textures. Let's see here. Maybe something a bit more spooky. Nature, trees, something like these. So we can take our gobo textures and pull those in to our texture slot. And immediately, we're not going to really see a whole lot. And that's because we have our spread is still up quite high. I can tone that down just a little bit. and we'll start to see breakup. But where Gobos really come into play is when you're using some kind of volumetrics to your scene. So like the fog that Ellie was just talking about. In our case here, we could throw a Redshift environment in. Have a whole lot of craziness right from the gate. And we can tone our scattering down. Maybe down quite a ways. I can actually just take this tint and we'll drop that. That'll really help just get this down to a reasonable area pretty quickly. There we go. And now if I go ahead and maybe move this backlight, the one rim light, we can already see that we're starting to get some of these nice volumetrics here. And this is only going to increase if I were to, say, use a spotlight. I'm using an area light for this one, so I can specifically control the spread on the light. But nonetheless, we can see how that's working out. Maybe we'll head down into our area light here, into object, take our spread all the way down to 0. That'll help sharpen up some of the details from the light there. And try to figure out exactly where we want the light. I kind of like it here, where we're really starting to get somewhat of a rim, but it's not too harsh on the one side there. Can boost up a little bit. Maybe bring our scattering up a little bit more so that we can get some of the details there. There, now we have kind of a nice, somewhat of a nice foggy look.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right, so I'm thinking in this one, we definitely need to tone down the rim light on the right side, or camera left. Really bring this down a ways. And now the next thing that I'm wanting to do here is add some light inside of the jack-o'-lanterns. And this process is pretty easy. We could work with just an emissive material through like the Redshift standard material. What I'm going to try to do is something a little bit different. So I want to have multiple light sources, pretty much one in each of the pumpkins. And so what I'm going to do here is actually use spheres. And this is something that I do a lot for my photo composites that I work on, is I start to use spheres with a Redshift mesh light to kind of illuminate certain areas for visual effects like fire overlays and whatnot. So what I'll do here is grab a sphere. It's going to be huge at first. And we'll take this sphere and we can drag the first one right inside of the first pumpkin here on the left. Scale it down so it's a bit smaller. And maybe place this right down towards the bottom, like we would have a candle, if you will, down towards the bottom side. There we go. And we can duplicate that holding down Control, bring that directly into the other pumpkin. And I think that'll work out for us where that's at. And then we can hold Control again and drag this up towards our other pumpkin here. And you can make this a lot easier on yourself by just looking through your top view. Maybe not once we have such high density to the mesh that we have going on here. That may be a bit wild. Let's see what we got. Oh, we were close. Close enough. There we go. All right, so this is pretty set up for us. All right, so now I have the 3 spheres. I'm going to select them all, Alt-G, put those in a null, call it light spheres. And then we're going to grab a Redshift area light. And now in the object parameters, we can change the area type or the area shape down to mesh. And then we can take our light spheres group and bring that down into the mesh area. There we go.
So while you're doing that, we do have just a couple more minutes before I have to leave. But we did have a question about noise volume. Would the top Redshift drop-down menu, Redshift to materials, utilities, and noise volume, would that be an alternative or equivalent of the shader fields? Hopefully that made sense.
You want to take a stab at that one, Ellie?
What was the question? Sorry, I was just reading through some of the others.
As an alternative or equivalent to the shader fields, would the drop-down Redshift menu basically being Redshift and then going to materials, utilities, and then noise volume, would that be an alternative or something to that shader field that you guys were doing?
I've never tried. No, I don't think so. So basically, that sort of that noise volume is to be used on the Redshift environment to give you that variation in your volumetric lighting or your sort of like foggy effect. Whereas if you're working with the Redshift volume object and you're throwing in a like a VDB that you've exported, or if you're creating a volume in the way that I did with the volume builder, you need to then use the volume material on that, because then it's the volume material where you enter your channels, your channel data, which is like emission, or in our case we just used the volume builder. But if you're like exporting exposure effects VDB from X particles, you can take so much more data. Like, I don't know why my brain's not working, but what would it be, like flames, smoke, velocity, perhaps? So all of those things can only be defined inside of the volume shader material. So yeah, different purposes for different things.
That makes
Hopefully
sense.
that helps.
Yeah. Very cool. Well,
Yeah, awesome. So I see. Oh, you have to head out, don't you, Ian?
I'm gonna have to bounce, yes. So I wanted to say goodbye to everybody while you guys finish up your renders. They're looking amazing. So I'm actually gonna
Appreciate
share.
it, man.
I'm just gonna pop my webcam back on, just as a
Thanks
proper goodbye.
Thanks so much for being part of this series, though, Ian. Yeah, me and Dustin will hang around for a bit and finish these off. So if you've got any more questions, but yeah, thanks so much, Ian. Especially for me, I feel like I'm definitely going to go back and do the rest of this series for the weeks that I wasn't here, and hopefully everyone else does too. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. Happy Halloween, everyone. Hopefully be safe, all that good stuff. And yeah, we're going to be doing more ZBrush stuff in the future. I'm already mapping it. It's coming.
Awesome.
You know, just got to figure it out. We're doing the ZBrush Summit. For those who don't know, look that up, ZBrushSummit.com. It's really important. It's really awesome. More ZBrush stuff. So check that out. And yeah, I will catch you guys later. Have a great one. And I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye, Ian. See you
Sounds
soon.
good, man. We'll see ya.
Okay, bye.
All right, so I do see a couple questions in here. So yes, Charles, do you have to have the light spheres in a connect object? Yeah, usually you do. I was thinking about putting them in a connect. I had a brain fart there for a second as I was putting it all together, but I just decided to merge them down and connect everything and delete because this isn't something where I'm really going to adjust where they're at. And so I just baked everything down to the light spheres, threw it in, and now we're having the effects that we're going for here. So yeah, I think we're Oh my goodness, I just entered the paint. Please don't crash on me. You ever have that where you click, you just happen to click just a little bit off? There we go.
Yeah.
So what I'm wanting to do at this point is work a little bit with the subsurface. I do like the ways that, we're getting some of this light bouncing around inside. And I want to push that a little bit. So what my plan would be for this normally, like I would take this to a whole different level in post-production in Photoshop. So it's kind of cool to see where this is at. But when I'm working with Subsurface, there's a couple things specifically that I'm looking for. And I'm sure that we'll talk about this on a whole different stream at some point, but it's making sure that I have enough information that when I'm using these passes in Photoshop specifically, like I'm able to pull enough detail out. So for me right now, this is primarily just in the hand. I like the little bits of subsurface that we're getting on the pumpkins, even on the back of the tombstone. And so everything has one kind of standard material on it right now. And so I'll just hold down Control, click and drag. We can duplicate, and we'll call this one the hand. And we can drop this directly onto our hand geometry here inside the viewport. And now that's just going to allow me to, like any other material, adjust just the hand. And so we'll head down to subsurface. The radius, I think, is fine. We may want to actually dial that back a little bit. But for right now, we'll just take the weight. We can raise that up a ways. And we can see now that we're starting to get quite a bit more of that subsurface information here. Awesome. And so from this point, we can check out our Redshift AOVs. And do I have subsurface in there at the moment? I don't think so. Oh, I do actually. Subsurface. There we go. So I'll enable it and check out that pass. Awesome. And so there's quite a bit of detail here, and that's really what I'm looking to see. We could actually adjust the radius a bit to really control some of this in the fingers, but primarily in the hand section is where I'm really looking to get some good breakup. And so that looks like it would have a pretty cool mask for us to adjust and work with. So with that out of the way, you can head back to beauty. And now I think the only thing that I'm really looking to do at this point is start to work with having some of this light balanced on the outside. So that's going to be our area light off to the left here. And the cool part about this is, like I said, I usually don't really work in like grayscale, in a grayscale fashion like this. But the cool part is that this really all comes down to lighting and the balancing of your lights once you get them set up. So composition, it's a little bit different. Usually I would play with some cool foreground and background elements and really push that a bit further. We've talked about that, I believe, earlier this year, actually, in a few different demystifying sessions on how to build composition and depth in your scene that way. But at this point, I think we're in a pretty good spot. Maybe turn on our background.
It looks so good.
Yeah, I like it. Oh, it's a Redshift environment. We want the dome light. There we go. Turn on the background. Maybe desaturate. There we go. Turn our saturation off on that. That'll be fine. Not sure. I almost want to tint this and see what this would look like tinted.
Do it.
You can push it. You can push it pretty far. Yeah, let's do it. Definitely. Break the grayscale code.
Your session. You can do whatever you like.
I do what I want.
Do what you want.
All right. And then in the camera, turn on some nice bokeh. And I'm thinking that inside of the camera object, we can head to physical, turn on movie camera, and we'll do maybe a 1.8, maybe a 2.8 aperture here. Yeah. Then we can focus pick right on the hand here.
Nice.
Probably work easier with a focus null. So we can grab a focus null and we'll turn off the focus picking on that side. Let's see, where's our camera? Head back to object. On the focus object, we can bring our null in and then rename the null. And now we can use the place tool and place that null right in the middle of our hand here. There we go. Awesome. So that's a very easy way to really start to select your focus areas in your scenes, is to just place a null in the scene and then use the place tool to place that directly on your object. Works a little bit easier than focus picking, especially if you're moving your camera and doing a lot of exploration. So yeah, Ellie, where are you? How is yours going? Do we want to share your screen and see what your progress looks like? I know we're already over, but it's kind of our normal way.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it is definitely our normal sort of go-to, isn't it? So yeah, I can. That looks so good. Oh, I don't want to share mine now. God. Okay, let me just steal the screen. Oh, that looks so nice. I love that subsurface effect as well.
Thanks.
Let me show my main screen. Cool, yeah, so I'll just sort of quickly talk through, because I know we're a little bit over, which we do love to do. I'll just talk through the little extra bits that I've done. Move that out of the way. So I was playing with the fog a little bit more, sort of like retinting, just to get, because I'm not too sure I'm like super happy with it. I was trying to make it a little bit more transparent here, just to kind of, yeah, maybe something like that. So yeah, pretty much what I did was copy and pasted, you know, because I'm lazy like that, my materials and changed the colors of the different ones. And then I tweaked some of them a little bit. So I've got sort of more black edges on here, and I increased some of the brighter areas just on here. I've got this little like pinky color, but I mean, the subsurface looks way better. But I was trying to go for like a cartoony style. Threw a little light in here, and then just sort of I've been like playing around whilst watching what you've been doing on my other screen with some of the different color controls. Like, I'm a big fan of Magic Bullet looks inside of C4D and Redshift, but I thought I'd see what kind of interesting effects I could get, because I'm not fussed about photorealism. I'm going for pretty much the complete opposite effect. So I thought, okay, let's see if I can like boost the contrast, like mess with some glows a little bit. Like, I just threw this plane, a little green, sort of flat green material, and then a couple of area lights. So I've got this area light here, which is sort of casting some more light on here, just to make the materials look brighter, as opposed to bringing out detail, which is what I'd normally do. And then another one I just thrown in the back to give that like illuminating from the back, so it creates that gradient, when really, again, it's just two area lights being thrown in there. So if I do a little 4 views, hopefully everyone can see. So yeah, this is this one, casting some light in the front, so that's sort of like coming in from here. And then the second one, yeah, is just basically pointing towards here. And I used some nulls. I really liked your the null placement trick with the depth of field. I really like that. Yeah, really good little like tips. And I do the same thing when it comes to targeting lights all the time using nulls.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a cheat code. When you,
it is,
I do the same thing with target tags. You know, they do have the lighting tool in Cinema.
Yeah.
Which is very similar, but I've actually found that I like placing my lights in the general direction and then using a focus null or using a targeted null with the place tool just to make that hit exactly where I want.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I like those tricks. And it's just things that I find that I just do all the time that I don't really think about now. It's just like a common practice, which is quite nice.
For sure.
Yeah, so just to quickly like run through these, threw on a little LUT inside of here. So yeah, Redshift comes with a bunch of default LUTs that you can use and just increase or decrease the strength just to sort of bring some of these colors out. So if I kick this off, we can see, if I just let it play, I can sort of like turn this off and on. So we can see it's just sort of like brightening up those areas. A few more color controls again, and then a little bit of that sort of like glow bloom just to add to the whole aesthetic of this. But I quite like it. I quite like it. It's different to sort of stuff I normally create. And of course, Ian's assets are just really, really great to work with. And what's nice, I haven't even had to worry about using this subdivision surface on here because I'm not fussed about detail today.
Yeah, it's so I didn't actually mention it, and maybe I should have. So my I sort of cheated a little bit with the other pumpkins in the scene that I was using. I actually went and used the asset browser and typed in pumpkin. And there are a couple of pumpkins. I didn't know that there were pumpkins in there, but there definitely are pumpkins.
Thing earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some pumpkins. Yeah, no, that's cool. I was surprised we should have put this stuff in the asset browser for everyone. That would have been good. Cool. So I guess like we've run a little bit over, but I think it was really fun to see what you created, Dustin, as well. Because yeah, we thought, how do we run this session? Do we both work on something, or do we do it together? And I like seeing the different techniques and the different concepts and just the different ideas around how you can work with these assets inside of C4D or your DCC of choice and renderer of choice.
For sure.
Which I think, yeah, a lot of creative fun. And as you guys know, you also have access to all of these assets. So the link is in the handout section. And so feel free to, take these assets and create your own piece, whether it's similar to mine or Dustin's, or just let your creativity sort of flow and create something for Halloween.
Definitely, it's worth it. Get spooky. Get spooky with it.
So let me just switch this back on. Oh, where am I? I'm over here. Hi, hey everyone. So thank you to everyone who is still here with us, and yeah, thank you to you, Dustin, for being part of these sessions. It's been a pleasure. Unfortunately, yeah, Ian's had to jump off, but we will thank him for you all, because I saw you all put like some lovely comments in there, which is really great. And this won't be the last ZBrush session or series that we do. We definitely, now we're all a lovely family, we'll definitely be doing a lot more integrating the software and just doing stuff on ZBrush on its own, which should be a lot of fun.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm excited for it. There's so much to be done kind of back and forth with the software. So
yes, there is. Yeah, lots of collaboration happening, which is good.
For sure.
Cool. Yeah, so don't forget to head over to the Maxon.net events page and register for next month's DPP series, which is MoGraph Mondays, if that's something you're into. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your Halloween and your week. And yeah, we'll catch you on another session soon.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.